Hi there, I'm Marius, and Microsoft has moved the server logic to general availability, and with that they have added the possibility to call Unbound custom APIs directly from server logic. We start in the Design Studio and navigate to Setup Server Logic, and then you can create a new server logic up here. I've already did that. We can look at it with Edit. The name is mandatory. I gave it param returner, and that is also how you call it. By assigning the roles anonymous users and authenticated users, I've enabled this for all users of the page, and that is okay because the param returner just returns your inputs back to you. And then with edit code, we can edit the actual content of the server logic. And as you can see, I have removed all of the sample content that is put in here when you create a new server logic, but you still need to comply to the conventions made. So my post method really needs to be called post. I have here a long version that I've used for developing that has multiple log statements that help me in my development. And then the main line here is server connector dataverse invoke custom API, and then post for regular actions and get if it is a function. Mine is an action, and my custom API is called MWO underscore param returner, and then I just pass in the data that I got in the body from my page. If you have some security concerns, you need to limit the data that can be manipulated or read by a specific user. You may want to manipulate this body before passing it to the custom API, because of course in the user's browser they can tamper with data, but what is done in the server logic cannot be manipulated by the user. Then remember, everything in server connector dataverse just returns string. Therefore, I parse this string and extract the body, and that is what I give back here in this return statement. Notice also that in comparison to what we did in the greeter bound, so let's hop over here. Here with the bound API, we had the binding first, and then with the slash Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and then the name of the custom API. This is not the case here with the Unbound API. And this behavior is in line what happens with the regular Dataverse Web API, which also has this prefix that is there for bound APIs, but not for unbound ones. So if you try to call it like this, you will get an error in the response. This is still quite long. I have a smaller version right here that skips all the logging and just takes the body, because I don't need pre-processing here, right into the custom API and returns the parsed output. And of course you can go even smaller. Here I just return whatever the invoke custom API returns, but this is not equivalent to what we did before, because A, the response is not wrapped. We need to apply additional parsing on the client side, and there is no error handling, which means all errors are passed directly to the client, and that may be unwanted and may leak more information about your implementation than you may want to, but you could put additional guardrails into the custom API itself to keep the server logic as small as possible. So over in my homepage, I have the button param returner, and this calls this function param returner server logic. And if we look at this function, we first have our inputs. These are all the valid input types for custom APIs. So if you are facing problems with one of the more complex one, like entity, you may want to pause the video right here. Also notice that the more complex types are not equivalent to what you would have passed to the Power Pages action solution. So if you have used that and now want to migrate to server logic, you might need to adapt your inputs like this entity. And then again, this is something we already had in the video about bound APIs. We use shell ajax save post, this case post because we implemented the post method, and then to underscore API server logics, and then the name of our server logics param returner, and here are inputs. On success, we call the on success function, and this parses the data twice because we have the wrapped response, logs out the response as a whole, and just for visual feedback, updates this text element with the string property, which should mean it says hello world. Let's see this in action. Here we have the param returner button. And there's our hello world. So first a look into the request. Here's what we have passed to the API. And here in the response, we have this data parameter, which again has a data parameter, which is why we had to pass the response twice. And in this parameter, you see here the data, but that's much easier to see in the console, where we can just unfold the object and see, for example, how the entity has a type, an ID field, and some other fields. As already mentioned in the video about bound APIs, we now have the possibility to call both bound and unbound custom APIs through server logic, and it's in general availability. So now we have just a native solution to call custom APIs. A native solution is of course much better than my custom Power Pages action solution, so I will retire this, and I suggest that you use server logic for this in the future. If you are of course already using the Power Pages action solutions, don't worry, it will keep working unless Microsoft makes some major changes to how the web API works. But for new implementations, of course, it's best to stick what the platform offers. That's it for today. See you in the next one.